In the spring of 1900, a group of Greek sponge divers fought against a violent storm in the Aegean Sea. Their small boat pitched and rolled as they sought shelter near a barren island called Antikythera, a forgotten rock between Crete and mainland Greece. When the storm passed and the waters calmed, Captain Dimitrios Kondos sent his divers down to search for sponges in the crystal-clear depths. What they found instead would challenge everything the modern world believed about ancient technology. At 50 meters below the surface, diver Elias Stadiatis discovered a nightmare of corroded bronze, marble statues twisted by time, and the scattered remains of a Roman shipwreck that had lain undisturbed for over 2,000 years. But among the amphorae and marble limbs, there was something else, something that should not have existed. A lump of corroded bronze and rotted wood, no bigger than a shoebox, that would prove the ancient Greeks possessed technological knowledge the world had forgotten for nearly 2 millennia. The year was 1901 when archaeologists brought the artifacts to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Most of the treasures were spectacular: marble statues of heroes and gods, bronze figures of philosophers, luxury items destined for wealthy Roman collectors. But that strange corroded lump sat ignored in a storage room, covered in limestone deposits from centuries on the seafloor. It looked like nothing, a formless mass of green oxidized metal fused with decayed wood. For months, no one paid it any attention. Then, on a quiet day in May, archaeologist Valerius Stais noticed something impossible. As the corroded mass dried and shifted slightly in the Mediterranean heat, a piece broke away, and he saw it. A bronze gear, perfectly cut, mathematically precise, hidden inside what appeared to be a wooden box. The ancient Greeks were not supposed to know how to build such things. History books taught that complex geared mechanisms did not appear until the medieval period, more than 1,000 years after this device had sunk beneath the waves. Yet here it was, unmistakable evidence of something extraordinary. When researchers carefully began to separate the corroded fragments, they found not one gear, but dozens, wheels within wheels, bronze teeth cut with remarkable precision, inscriptions in ancient Greek covering nearly every surface. This was not a simple tool or decorative object. This was a machine, a calculating machine of staggering sophistication, built sometime around 150 to 100 BCE, and lost to history when the Roman cargo ship carrying it met its fate on the rocks of Antikythera. To understand what the ancient Greeks had created, we must journey back to the world that gave birth to this mechanical wonder. The Hellenistic Period, the 3 centuries following the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE, was an age of explosive intellectual achievement. In the great cities of the Mediterranean, Alexandria in Egypt, Rhodes on its island fortress, Syracuse in Sicily, Pergamon in Asia Minor, Greek scholars were pushing the boundaries of human knowledge further than ever before. These were not primitive people living in the shadow of mythology. They were mathematicians, astronomers, engineers, and philosophers who understood the cosmos with remarkable clarity. They had calculated the circumference of the earth with astonishing accuracy. They had developed the foundations of geometry that would remain unchanged for 2,000 years. They had built working steam engines, automatic doors for temples, and mechanical theaters where bronze figures moved through elaborate scenes powered by nothing but weights and water. The wealthy citizens of this world were obsessed with the heavens, not from superstition alone, but from a genuine desire to understand the mechanical precision they observed in the movement of the stars and planets. Greek astronomers had already determined that the Earth was a sphere. They had measured the distance to the moon. They had developed complex models to explain the wandering paths of the planets through the constellations, those mysterious celestial bodies that moved against the fixed backdrop of stars. They called them planets, the wanderers. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn were all known to ancient observers, and their movements were carefully recorded and studied. The Greeks understood that these movements followed patterns, cycles that repeated with mathematical regularity. But the calculations required to predict where a planet would appear in the sky on any given night were enormously complex, requiring hours of painstaking arithmetic. Now imagine a wealthy merchant or aristocrat in Rhodes, or perhaps Corinth, someone educated in the philosophical schools, someone who had studied with the followers of Archimedes or the astronomers of Alexandria. This person wants to know when the next lunar eclipse will occur, or where Venus will appear at dawn in 3 months' time. He could consult astronomical tables, scrolls filled with numbers and calculations, or he could use a machine. A bronze device small enough to carry, elegant enough to display as a work of art, yet capable of mechanically calculating the positions of the sun, the moon, and the 5 known planets for any date, past or future. This was the Antikythera Mechanism. This was Greek genius made tangible. The device itself was housed in a wooden case, perhaps made of fine walnut or oak, with bronze doors front and back. These doors were covered with thousands of tiny Greek letters, an instruction manual etched directly into the machine. When you opened the case, you would see a complex arrangement of bronze gears, at least 30 of them, possibly more than 40 when the device was complete. On the front face was a large dial showing the Greek zodiac and an Egyptian calendar, 2 concentric circles that could track the passage of the year and the position of the sun through the constellations. Pointers indicated the positions of the sun, the moon, and possibly the 5 planets, each moving at their correct relative speeds as you turned the machine's input crank. But the true sophistication lay in the details. The Greeks had discovered something remarkable about the moon. Its speed across the sky is not constant. Sometimes it moves faster, sometimes slower, following what we now know is an elliptical orbit around the Earth. The Greek astronomer Hipparchus, working in Rhodes around 150 BCE, had figured this out and developed a geometric model to explain it. The builders of the Antikythera mechanism didn't just know this theory. They implemented it mechanically, using a special gear arrangement that modern engineers call a pin-can-slot device. They created a mechanical representation of Hipparchus's lunar theory. As you turned the input crank, the moon pointer would speed up and slow down, exactly mimicking the moon's variable motion across the sky. This level of mechanical ingenuity would not appear again until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe, more than 1,000 years in the future. The back of the device held 2 large spiral dials, unlike anything else in ancient technology. The upper dial was marked with 235 divisions, representing the Metonic cycle, a 19-year period after which the phases of the moon repeat on the same calendar dates. Greek astronomers used this cycle to predict eclipses and plan their lunar calendar. The mechanism could show you exactly where you were in this long cycle. But more impressive still, small inscriptions on this dial indicated which months required an extra day, automatically accounting for the complex intercalation needed to keep a lunar calendar aligned with the solar year. The lower spiral dial tracked the Saros cycle, the 223-month period after which eclipses repeat in the same pattern. The Greeks had discovered that if a lunar eclipse occurred, then 223 months later, another eclipse would occur at almost the same configuration. This dial was divided into 223 sections, and small glyphs marked the positions where eclipses could be expected. The mechanism could predict both solar and lunar eclipses, not just their occurrence, but their characteristics, times of day, even their magnitude. Who built such a device? The question has haunted researchers for more than a century. The craftsmanship required was extraordinary. Someone had to design the gear train, calculating the tooth counts needed to create the correct astronomical ratios. Someone had to cast and cut the bronze gears with precision, creating teeth that would mesh smoothly and transfer motion accurately. Someone had to engrave thousands of tiny letters onto the bronze plates, writing the instruction manual that explained how to interpret the dials and set the mechanism for any desired date. This was not the work of one person, but of a sophisticated workshop, probably one of the centers of learning in the Hellenistic world. Many scholars believe the mechanism was built on the island of Rhodes, home to a famous school of astronomy, and the legendary Colossus, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Rhodes was a center of trade and learning, a place where the theoretical knowledge of philosophers met the practical skills of engineers and craftsmen. The inscriptions on the mechanism mention several months by names used specifically in Corinthian colonies, of which Rhodes was one. Perhaps it was built there, in a workshop near the harbor, where merchant ships came and went carrying ideas and inventions across the Mediterranean. Perhaps it was commissioned by a wealthy patron, someone who wanted to own a piece of the cosmos, a mechanical model of the heavens that demonstrated both the order of nature and the brilliance of Greek thought. Or perhaps it came from Syracuse, the city of Archimedes, the greatest engineer of the ancient world. Cicero, the Roman orator and philosopher, wrote centuries later about devices he had seen that were said to have been built by Archimedes. He described the mechanical models of the heavens, spheres that showed the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. Cicero was amazed that a human mind could reproduce in bronze and wood what the gods had created in the sky. Could the Antikythera Mechanism have been descended from the work of Archimedes himself? We will never know for certain. Archimedes died in 212 BCE, when Roman soldiers conquered Syracuse, and most of his mechanical works were lost. But the tradition of building such devices clearly continued, passed down through generations of craftsmen who kept the knowledge alive. What we do know is that the mechanism found at Antikythera was not unique. Ancient writers mention similar devices, celestial calculators and mechanical models owned by educated Romans and Greeks. When the ship sank off Antikythera, probably around 60 BCE, based on other artifacts in the wreck, it was carrying luxury goods to Italy, possibly for a wealthy Roman general or senator. The mechanism was just one piece of cargo among many. This suggests such devices, while rare and expensive, were known to the wealthy elite of the Roman world. But as the Roman Empire rose to dominate the Mediterranean, something changed. The tradition of building these complex mechanisms faded. The workshops that created them disappeared. The knowledge was lost. Perhaps the workshops that held the secrets were destroyed in the chaos of Rome's civil wars. Perhaps the knowledge was always held by only a few masters, and when they died without passing on their full understanding, the skill died with them. Whatever the reason, by the time the Roman Empire fell, the Antikythera Mechanism had become impossible. Medieval scholars, reading ancient texts that mentioned such devices, assumed they were myths or exaggerations. No one in the Middle Ages could conceive of how the ancient Greeks might have built working models of the cosmos using nothing but bronze and human ingenuity. The mechanism lay on the seafloor for 2,000 years, slowly being consumed by the sea. Wooden parts rotted away. Bronze corroded and merged with limestone deposits. The precise gears that once turned smoothly became locked together in a mass of oxidation. When the sponge divers found it in 1900, they had no idea what they were looking at. Neither did the first archaeologists who examined it. It took decades of patient research, using increasingly sophisticated technology, to understand what the ancient Greeks had achieved. X-ray photographs in the 1970s revealed the internal structure of the gears. Advanced CT scanning in the 2000s allowed researchers to read inscriptions hidden inside the corroded mass, to count tooth numbers on gears buried deep within the mechanism, to finally understand how this impossible machine actually worked. What the Antikythera Mechanism tells us is profound. It tells us that human progress is not a simple upward line from primitive to advanced. Civilizations can reach extraordinary heights of knowledge and sophistication, and that knowledge can be lost, sometimes for centuries. The ancient Greeks understood things about astronomy and mechanics that would have to be rediscovered during the European Renaissance. They built devices that would not be matched until clockmakers in the 1400s began creating the first mechanical astronomical clocks. For more than 1,000 years, the world forgot what was possible. The mechanism is a reminder that what we call progress is fragile. It depends on institutions that preserve knowledge, on chains of master and apprentice that pass down skills, on societies that value learning and inquiry. When those chains are broken, even the most brilliant achievements can vanish, leaving behind only corroded fragments and puzzled descendants who cannot believe their ancestors were capable of such things. Today, the pieces of the Antikythera Mechanism rest in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, displayed behind glass where visitors can see the corroded gears and imagine what the complete device looked like 2,000 years ago. Scientists have built working reconstructions, gleaming bronze machines that whir and click as you turn the input crank, pointers sweeping across dials to show the ancient Greek cosmos in motion. These reconstructions prove beyond any doubt that the mechanism worked, that it could calculate with remarkable accuracy, that the ancient Greeks possessed mechanical knowledge we are only now fully appreciating. But every reconstruction also reminds us of how much we still don't know. The original device had more gears than have survived. There are functions we can only guess at. There are inscriptions too damaged to read. The complete story of this machine, and of the brilliant minds that conceived and built it, remains partially hidden in the depths of time, as unreachable now as the wreck was for 2 millennia beneath the waves. The Antikythera Mechanism forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about our own age, about what we are building today that might be forgotten tomorrow, and what lost wisdom from the past we might need to rediscover before it's too late.